worked. And he was such a joy. And George had a sort of.
Ray Cooper transformed percussion from supporting role into theatrical art. Unlike traditional drummers who stayed behind their kits, Cooper commanded center stage with an array of instruments, including gongs, timpani, tambourines, and many others that most people couldn't even identify. He approached cymbals with aggressive intensity while treating tempo blocks with reverence and care. His entire body became part of the rhythm, making every strike a visual performance and every moment of silence equally meaningful. Cooper didn't simply maintain the beat, he molded and shaped time itself, making rhythm something audiences could see as well as hear. Growing up in England, Cooper grasped something essential about music. He understood that rhythm functioned as a form of conversation rather than mere background noise. For him, percussion added color, texture, and physical emotion to music. His decades-long collaboration with Elton John elevated pop concerts into symphonic experiences. He also worked alongside legendary artists, including George Harrison and Eric Clapton. Each partnership demonstrated the same truth: the right percussionist could elevate good music into something transcendent and unforgettable. Cooper accumulated albums with the same passion he collected instruments. Each record opened his mind to different possibilities and fresh approaches to rhythm and sound. Some recordings demonstrated raw power, while others revealed the beauty of subtlety. All of them proved that music exists as much in the quiet spaces between beats as in the beats themselves. 7 particular albums fundamentally shaped how Cooper perceived the world, how he moved through it, and how he transformed every performance into something resembling a sacred ritual. These recordings built the foundation of his musical identity. The first transformative album was Ravi Shankar's 1956 recording of 3 Ragas. This album made Cooper realize that time could be fluid rather than rigid. Indian classical music operated on rhythmic principles completely foreign to Western rock music. The tabla drums created polyrhythms so intricate that they seemed impossible to execute. Shankar's sitar sang melodies that stretched for 20 minutes without any repetition. Listening to this music, Cooper understood that Western music had barely explored the surface of rhythmic possibilities. There were entire universes to discover beyond standard 4/4 time signatures and basic backbeats. The tabla players moved their hands so rapidly they became blurred, creating patterns that shifted and evolved while building tension through acceleration. Cooper studied these techniques with obsessive dedication. He learned how rhythm could be melodic, how percussion could drive a narrative without any lyrics. Indian classical music treated rhythm as architecture, building intricate structures note by note until they achieved transcendence. This completely changed everything Cooper thought he understood about percussion. Cooper began incorporating tablas into his own collection of instruments. He started thinking in unusual time signatures and discovered that 16 beats could be divided in countless ways. He realized that rhythm didn't merely serve melody, they were equal partners in creating music. Later, when performing with Elton John, these Indian influences emerged throughout his work. Complex percussion patterns wove through pop songs, creating unexpected accents and rhythms that both surprised and satisfied listeners simultaneously. Ravi Shankar opened doors Cooper hadn't known existed, showing him that Western rhythm was just one dialect in a language with infinite variations. True mastery meant understanding all of them. The second crucial album was the 1997 Cuban collection that featured veterans from Havana's golden age. This music hit Cooper with the force of a hurricane. The percussion was relentless, joyful, and incredibly sophisticated. Congas, bongos, timbales, and claves all interlocked, creating grooves so deep and compelling that listeners could happily lose themselves forever. Cooper heard conversations happening between instruments, with call and response elevated to high art. This rhythm represented pure celebration. What fascinated Cooper most was the layering technique. Each percussionist played relatively simple patterns, but when combined, they created complexity that seemed alive and organic. The clave provided the backbone while everything else danced around it. Syncopation became a philosophy. Every musician listened, responded, and pushed the groove forward without overpowering it. Cooper recognized this as communal music making at its finest, where ego disappeared and only rhythm remained. Cooper began studying Afro-Cuban techniques seriously, exploring the son, rumba, and mambo. Each style had its own rhythmic language with unique rules and freedoms. Cooper incorporated these elements into recording sessions, adding a conga pattern here or a clave rhythm there. Western rock meeting Caribbean fire created something neither tradition could achieve alone. Cuban music taught Cooper that rhythm was community, that the best groove emerged from musicians serving something larger than themselves, and that joy and precision weren't opposites, but partners. The third essential album was Led Zeppelin's 1975 double album, Physical Graffiti. John Bonham's drumming on this record redefined the possibilities of rock percussion. The album showcased Bonham at his absolute peak, where power and precision married perfectly. His kick drums sounded like cannons, and his snare cracked like lightning. But he also understood restraint, knowing when to pull back and let silence speak. Cooper recognized a master at work. One track built on a hypnotic riff, with Bonham's drumming creating a foundation so solid you could build cities on it. The pattern was simple, but the feel was everything. Bonham played slightly behind the beat, creating tension that made the song breathe. Another 11-minute track let him explore blues rhythms with rock power, with drumming that never repeated itself exactly, but never lost the groove. What Cooper admired most was his touch. Despite hitting harder than almost anyone, he had incredible dynamics. He could whisper on cymbals and make a single hi-hat note sing. His fills were melodic and purposeful, never just showing off, but always serving the composition. This was sophisticated musicianship disguised as raw power. Bonham demonstrated that rock drumming could be as sophisticated as jazz and as nuanced as classical music. Volume didn't mean thoughtlessness. The heaviest music required the lightest touch in the right moments.
The fourth influential album was Carlos Santana's 1970 masterpiece. This record introduced Cooper to Latin rock fusion, executed perfectly. The percussion section functioned as a three-piece orchestra, creating rhythmic tapestries that were both hypnotic and explosive. Songs pulsed with Afro-Cuban rhythms, electrified by rock energy. Cooper marveled at how Santana's band integrated percussion as primary voices rather than decoration. The timbales answered the guitar, and the congas drove entire sections by themselves. Western rock structure met Latin rhythm without either compromising. Instead, they elevated each other, creating hybrid music that was totally new while honoring ancient traditions. The album's approach to dynamics particularly struck Cooper. Quiet sections featured subtle percussion creating atmosphere, while loud sections exploded with all instruments attacking together. But even in chaos, the clave held everything together. That invisible structure kept the music grounded no matter how far it traveled. Cooper absorbed these lessons into his own work, thinking about percussion sections rather than single instruments. He considered how different textures could layer and how ethnic instruments could blend with rock without feeling forced. Santana proved that fusion wasn't dilution. Done right, it was multiplication, where combining elements created something far greater than their sum. The fifth album was a 1975 Elton John record that Cooper actually played on. This marked his first major collaboration with Elton John. The album was an autobiography in song, with lyrics telling an origin story and melodies carrying it all with orchestral grandeur. Cooper's percussion added unexpected dimension. Tambourines and shakers created shimmer, timpani added drama, and glockenspiel provided magic. What made this album special was its ambition. The artists weren't making simple pop songs, but creating a suite where each track flowed into the next, building narrative through music. Cooper understood his role perfectly: support without overwhelming, enhance without stealing focus. His percussion appeared exactly when needed and disappeared when it didn't. This was collaboration as high art. One track featured Cooper's tambourine creating urgency during verses while pulling back during choruses to let the vocals soar. Another ballad had him adding gentle textures that made it feel more intimate. His contributions were subtle but essential. Remove them and the songs lose crucial dimension. This album cemented Cooper's partnership with Elton John, showing both artists what they could achieve together. Pop music didn't have to mean simple. It could be theatrical, emotional, and complex. Cooper's percussion helped transform piano pop into something approaching opera. His restraint became his power. The sixth album was the Beatles' 1969 recording. Ringo Starr's drumming on this swan song gave Cooper a masterclass in taste. The album featured Ringo at his most musical. His playing on one opening track was minimalist genius, with a hi-hat pattern that became iconic despite being simple and seemingly impossible to improve. His work on the medley showed incredible versatility, with different feels for different sections, including jazz brushes and hard rock crashes, everything serving the composition. Cooper admired Ringo's egoless approach. He never overplayed or inserted himself where he wasn't needed. One track featured drumming so tasteful it was almost invisible, yet imagining the song without it was impossible. That was true mastery, making yourself essential while remaining humble. The fills were melodic, the time was perfect, and the dynamics served the emotion. What Cooper learned from Ringo was the power of space. Not every moment needed percussion. Silence was a valuable tool. Restraint created impact. When Ringo did fill, it mattered because he hadn't been filling constantly. This lesson proved invaluable. Cooper built his career on knowing when to play and when to stop, when to add color and when to let others shine. The Beatles showed that the best percussionists listened more than they played, and that serving the song was the highest calling. The seventh and most important album was The Who's 1970 live recording. Keith Moon's performance was chaotic brilliance. Cooper called it the greatest drumming ever captured. Moon played like 3 drummers simultaneously, with fills that lasted entire verses and cymbals crashing constantly. Yet somehow it all worked, powered by supernatural energy. Moon didn't keep time, he attacked it, wrestled it, and made it surrender.
One track featured Moon completely unleashed, with his drums functioning as another solo instrument competing with guitar and bass. Another showed he could create hooks through rhythm alone, with an opening drum pattern as memorable as any riff. Moon proved percussion could lead rather than follow, could drive songs rather than simply support them. Cooper recognized both genius and warning in Moon's approach. The genius was absolute commitment and total fearlessness. Moon played every show like his last. The warning was sustainability. That level of intensity came with costs. Cooper took the fearlessness while leaving the recklessness, finding his own path between restraint and abandon. What made this album most influential was its representation of percussion's possibilities. Moon showed that drummers could be frontmen and performers, not just timekeepers. Theatricality and musicianship could coexist beautifully. Cooper built his entire stage presence on these lessons, making percussion visual and making rhythm something audiences watched as much as heard. Ray Cooper never simply kept time. These 7 albums taught him that rhythm was a language, that percussion was theater, that beats were conversation, and that performance could be ceremony. His instruments sang because these masters taught him their various dialects. He learned power from rock drummers, subtlety from jazz players, complexity from Indian classical musicians, and joy from Cuban masters. He discovered that the spaces between notes mattered as much as the notes themselves, that silence could be more powerful than constant activity, and that serving the music was more important than showcasing individual skill. Through studying these recordings, Cooper developed his unique approach to percussion. He understood that different musical traditions offered different insights into rhythm's possibilities. Western rock taught him about power and dynamics. Indian classical music revealed intricate polyrhythms and the melodic potential of percussion. Cuban music demonstrated how multiple simple patterns could combine into complex, joyful grooves. Each tradition contributed essential elements to his musical vocabulary. Cooper's career proved that percussion could be central rather than peripheral to music. His theatrical stage presence made rhythm visible, transforming drumming into performance art. He showed that percussionists could command attention while serving the music, that they could be both humble and powerful, both restrained and explosive. His work with Elton John and countless other artists demonstrated how the right percussionist could transform good music into something transcendent. These 7 albums represented more than just influential recordings. They were teachers, guides, and sources of endless inspiration. Each one revealed different aspects of rhythm's potential,
different ways of thinking about time and sound. Together, they formed the foundation of Cooper's musical philosophy and approach to performance. They taught him that music lives in the spaces between beats as much as in the beats themselves, that silence can be as powerful as sound, and that true mastery comes from understanding when to play and when to stop.